Act like this is like a Celine Dion concert, and we'll just go with it, right? If I just like move my lips, it'll be like lip syncing. So yeah, why GitHub? So who here has heard of GitHub? Please raise your hand, everybody. Awesome, yay, one victory. There's also Bitbucket. I mentioned SVN. There's several different other modes of source control. I'm pretty confident that GitHub is the most popular. There are different methodologies behind source control. And we'll kind of get into some of them, but I want you guys to not think of GitHub as Git, because these are two different things. Git is just a paradigm for how your source code is going to be controlled and maintained, but there are several different kind of interfaces for Git. So I mentioned Bitbucket. Bitbucket and GitHub use the exact same methodologies. They're just different interfaces. So if you learn Git in the command line, they're literally identical. You're just going to have a different personal view. They also, like GitHub, by default, your repositories are public, and Bitbucket, by default, your repositories are private. So there's the difference in methodologies. So don't, once you learn Git, you're pretty much solid in your ability to go and do Bitbucket. There's not a tremendous amount of difference. Now, if you switch over to like SVN, which I'm not going to talk about here today, it is different. So there's a gap there that you'll have to take care of. But overall, maintaining source control is extremely important. So GitHub is, I don't even want to say is one of the most popular. I'm pretty confident it is the most popular. Because it is public by nature, open source projects tend to favor GitHub for that. We want people to contribute, and if they can't see your code by default, or you have to pay for that, that's kind of like a barrier to entry a lot of open source projects don't want. So GitHub being public, it's just kind of the way to go for most people. Once again, open source community is huge. We now spell huge with a Y. I want to make sure everybody does that from now on. Huge has a Y in it. GH Pages, GitHub Pages is a neat little feature for GitHub. One of the kind of hurdles we as more front-end or even full-stack developers face is standing up a server to display web pages, right? If you're not familiar with that process, it can be a little bit intimidating. GitHub Pages solves that for us, makes it very, very simple. It's basically just a few clicks, and you can have your project, your portfolio, whatever it may be, have its own web page. It's not going to have its own domain name unless you pay for it, but it will have its own web page, so you can point employers to it, or you can test it out in a real browser if you want to. So it's a really neat feature that we're going to be leveraging for everybody who's not a DevOps person or individual or knows how to stand up servers. It'll be really important. It will take care of that for you. GitHub lets employers see your activity. Has anybody ever seen this activity feed? If you're on GitHub, you've probably seen it, and some people will tell you to live and die by this. I'm not that strict, but for the most part, we're all sailors now. For the most part, you want employers to see that you have a passion for coding, and how do they know how you have a passion for it? If you're in school or something like that, contributing to open source projects, your own projects, this is a commitment. Every time you get a yellow, green, whatever mark it may be, that shows that you were coding that day. If you do that every single day, 365 days a year, that's a big deal. That shows that you like doing this. You would be surprised how many people are out there that do coding and have 4-year degrees that really just don't enjoy it, and they do it for a job. And that's okay. I mean, we all have to make money, but for us that don't have degrees and we're trying to prove to employers that they should hire us and take a chance on us to come and do work for them, things like this are extremely important. If you like what you do, you're more apt to want to learn how to do it better, follow directions, or improve the process. So this is, you would think it's a minor feature, but it's a big deal. And this will show your contributions to private repos. To an extent, it will show that you contributed to a private repo, but all your public repos, commits, issue fixes, pull requests, things like that. And there's a whole there's documentation on what counts to fill in that little green bubble. This is actually mine. So in the past 12 months, I've made 514 contributions. Now that's not like active working lines of code. That's just some type of contribution to a source code. Most of those are going to be my own projects. I don't have a lot of time to do open source, which is just, you start working for an employer and they want you to work 8 hours a day on what they have. So if you find an employer that values open source or you want to contribute to open source, it is a big deal, and people do look for that. Being able to work in a team, which is almost the very definition of what source control is for, these things are important. Why a portfolio? Even for back-end developers, people that don't even like the front end, a portfolio is especially important if you do not have a degree or you have no experience, right? A portfolio is meant to do a handful of things, and one of them is to show employers what you can literally do for them, right? So if you're going to go work for an e-commerce website, do you know how to appropriately display a product in a good way, in a fashionable way? Do you know how to design a button that doesn't look atrocious? Can you show that to me? Can you prove to me that if I hire you for the job, that you're not going to do a bad job, right? I'm not going to have to give you a lot of hand-holding to get it done. Your portfolio is your ability to do that. Now, I know for those that are more server-side, that want to do more command line-oriented stuff or maybe scripts, this is a little bit, it's kind of a catch-22. You can't visualize like a website, you can't visualize a back-end script running. So if you write the world's best machine learning program and it has no visual interface, it just spits out data, it's kind of hard to do that. But you can include links and you can include code, and if there's a will, there's a way, you can display that data in some fashionable way, and that's important. Those things will get you hired, right? So even if you do and you are going to school for a 4-year degree, it may help, but having a portfolio will show that you're not just a student doing the bare minimum to get by, and you're not just learning the theory, you're learning practical application of your skills. Do not downplay the portfolio. Maybe 9 out of every 10 people I hear of that get hired, partially, if not, the majority of the time because of their portfolio and the things that they display to employers related to it. In the absence of real-world experience, side projects are like gold. You should cherish side projects. Even if you currently have a job, you should be doing side projects. At least in the beginning. As you get more tenured, 10, 15, senior, etc., you make a career out of this, it's not as important because you now have a track record of infinite projects. You've worked for so many employers and done so many things. There's not a whole lot of guesswork into what level you're at. But in the beginning, the first 3 to 5 years, when you're still an entry-level junior, kind of going into like that mid-level range, you still want to show your side projects. If you go to work for an employer and all you do all day long is work on their stuff, you don't have any ambition to go out and learn new things or to try to develop your own new way of thinking or process. These things will be kind of a setback for you in regards to the person who has gone out and learned new things and tried new paradigms and ways of coding or producing products. So side projects are like gold, and you should, whenever possible, even if you're not going to commit to it, we always like finished work, but there's very few times I can think of something that's ever been truly finished. It's always kind of in the process of just being remodeled and refactored, redeveloped. Your portfolio is also a representation of who you are as a programmer. It's not meant to be a black and white sheet of paper that just kind of goes through your specifics. If you like contributing or to open source, this is the place to do it. This is the place to tell people, I like going on hikes and adventure, and I know how to relieve stress, and I'm not going to go postal for any reason. I like to go play baseball with my kids. You're a family person. You're not likely to pack up and leave after 90 days. Little things like that can also it will help employers evaluate whether or not you're a good culture fit. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but if you have 2 people that are identical in skill sets or, identical in pros and cons, and then one of them seems like a better culture fit than the other, they're probably going to go with the one that's a better culture fit, right? If this is a young, new, hip startup, we hear it all the time, and it's unfortunate, but a young, new, hip startup is probably not going to hire the 52-year-old, server-side PHP developer unless they really need them. They're going to want another young, hip, guy who likes to name every coffee under the face of the earth, On the flip side, if you're going to work for a platform that's been around for 25 years and uses a language that you've never even heard of, and they need developers, the young, hip guy is probably not going to get that job. He's not a good culture fit for that. You're going to be working with people who are professionals and more well-established and have, familiarity with what's going on and the environment in which code is being produced. So don't think of your portfolio as just, here's what I do, here's what I know, please hire me. It's also a representation of who you are. So you have a little, kind of artistic room to play around with your portfolio. Doesn't have to be complicated. Now, this kind of flies in the face with the whole artistic leeway, but in reality, you don't have, I mean, a little bit goes a long way. Even making small changes to padding, margins, using images appropriately will take your portfolio from 0 to 100 very quickly. And then all the advanced things that you may know in front-end web development, they're going to be more like the icing on the cake than the actual substance of your portfolio. Now we're going to move on to Git. And we have some live coding examples towards the end of this, which is why I'm going a little bit fast. So hopefully I can get to most of them. But yes, Git Basics. Now I'm using the word Git here. I'm not using the word GitHub. Once again, I want to reiterate. GitHub is just like your interface for interacting with Git. Now, when I say Git, I could be using GitHub, I could be using Bitbucket, or any of the other ones. There's several others out there that aren't as mainstream. So Git is just a methodology, right? It is a form of version control. Has anybody ever, I hope I get a lot of hands raised because it is extremely important. Has anybody ever used source control before? TFS, SVN, awesome. No, you haven't. No, I'm kidding. Never. So I'm going to take a step back and do a little aside, and eventually we're going to come up with like a name for my asides, like Daniel's Tangents or something, or Daniel's Ramblings. But I do want to take an aside real quick and kind of explain the importance of version control. Has anybody ever worked on a project with like more than 3 people? Woo, woo, yeah. How awesome is it whenever you are both working in the same source code on the same file in the same branch, and you're going to commit stuff? Is it great? What kind of experience do you have with that? Yeah, you're going to get errors wazoo, and you're going to be kind of disorganized. One of the primary reasons why you should be using source control is because A, you can kind of manage features and implement features in a way so that they're not going to make breaking changes. Your website's not going to crash because you forgot a semicolon. And also, so when you're working with other people, you can work independently from one another, and before the code ever actually makes it back to the main file, the main source code, you can see whether or not it's going to break it and whether or not you guys were unfortunately working on the same thing in different ways. It happens all the time. You get what they call merge conflict. It is very important that when you're using source control that you're using branches correctly and stuff like that. And we'll go into it in just a moment. But you want to keep these things kind of independent from one another to manage them. It's like, do you want to work on the entire car all at once, or do you want to work on just the tire? It is more efficient for the most part to work on just the tire and then kind of bring it into the production mode as it goes on, as it gets reviewed, as it gets tested. It allows you to keep a complete history of all changes made to your code base. If you have if you're working on a website that does $1 million in business and you don't see it up front and 2 weeks later a portion of your code gets exploited and you just cost the company $200,000, how do you roll that back? Well, with source control, every time you commit, you get like an identifier, a little key to which you can go back and you can remove that change. You can make fixes to that. You can see where that is. Now, that's a whole, finding bugs is a difficult process, but without source control, good luck. Try to remember what you were doing 2 weeks ago whenever you commit code every single day. You could be committing 100 lines of code or 2 lines of code, and it is not easy in a large application to go and find what you were working on, even 2 days ago. I've worked on something where at 8 o'clock in the morning, everything was just fine, and by 5 o'clock, we were running around like the world was on fire, all because of, simple things. And that's why source control is extremely important, for like a more business level environment. Being able to roll back changes whenever there's issues is a tremendous, it's extremely valuable. Working on things at the same time. And I want to mention that again. If you're working with other people, please use source control. It makes things tremendously easier. And there are different ways of doing so. Woohoo, Daniel's Tangents. I swear, I'm gonna make a blog, and it's gonna be Daniel's Tangents. Has anybody ever heard of we're gonna go through some of the commands. who knows the difference between git clone and git fork? Does anybody know what a fork is versus a clone? Yeah, somewhat? You definitely should. So this comes up a lot, and it happens all the time. If you create a project and somebody clones that project, makes changes to it, and you don't have any authentication, and they push it back up to the original one, those changes are going to happen on your repo. Though, congratulations, you just inherited some code. If they clone your entire website that you may or may not have wanted cloned, and then they put it on their own repo, congrats, there's now 2 identical websites out there, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. There's MIT licensing and stuff like that, but I mean, are you going to buy a lawyer for a website that you don't make any money off of? Simple things like that. If it's your own repo, or you're not going to be pushing it to your own repository, git clone is just fine, right? If there's a tool out there like funny emojis in your command line interface, and it says clone this repo and use those, that's fine as long as you never push that back up to your own repository, right? Vice versa. If you are working on just your own code and nobody else is working on it, and you don't need a whole lot of that authentication stuff, and you know what's going on, git clone is just fine. You can push and make changes to the master branch and maybe some other branches all the time. There's no worries there, right? If you are contributing to someone else's project, you fork it, right? If you are ever going to want to make changes to it and include this in your own repo, you're going to want to fork it. It gives the original repository owners kind of a track record of who's been using their stuff, so they make sure that you're not using it for things that's outside of what they thought it should be used for. And it also prevents any kind of weird issues where you accidentally push to master. Pushing to master when you don't have permission or something like that, and there's not authentication in place, is a huge no-no. And it gets you in a lot of trouble. So if you're contributing to open source, git fork. If someone made something cool and you want to put it on your own website, make changes to it, git fork. If it's just a tool, you're never going to do anything with it, you're never going to put it out for other people to view, git clone. Those are important things, and you're going to eventually do something. You're going to choose the wrong one. That's okay. Kill it, start over. It'll be just fine. But try to be mindful of those differences. You can see whether or not a file will cause a breaking change. You can roll back changes. Manage new features and manage releases for starters. There's a whole list of benefits from source control. These are all extremely valuable, especially the not causing breaking changes. With merge conflicts, it tells you, it will throw an error. Now, there are holes in this process, but for the most part, merge conflicts will tell you if 2 things have been committed and they don't have, either they're not the same file, they're both the same file with different code, or the file never existed and you're trying to change that file that doesn't exist. Merge conflict will do a good job of giving you those errors. It's not going to tell you if your code works, so don't think that merge conflict protects you from writing bad code, because it doesn't. That's for testing and things like that. But it will keep you from making those simple mistakes that miss a semicolon, or you accidentally deleted a line of code you didn't mean to delete. It will give you that and make sure that you know that those things are gone. This is all done via the command line. If anybody has done programming for a while, you know that every time you take your hands off the keyboard, it's just like a split second that you're kind of losing. And if you live most of your life in the command line interface, especially like bash or even CMD, command prompt, you're going to do a lot of work with your hands on the keyboard. So having command line interface for Git it's fantastic. I won't go as far as to say that people should use Vim and never, ever use a mouse, but for the most part, it does make you faster, and it's just another little added benefit. They do have programs and applications where you can visualize the changes you're making for GitHub. They have like a desktop app and stuff like that. And for most other Git repos or established Git applications as well, they have some kind of desktop application for you to see it if you're not a command line person. But for the most part, the command line is where it's at. A lot of your small changes will be done via the command line. It's not like you will probably use 5 or 6 command line calls, so to speak, more than all the others unless you do something wrong. So it's not a difficult amount of things to memorize, and it kind of makes sense after a while. You just kind of get used to it. And let's go over some of those. Now, I'm going to kind of go over these fairly quickly because I'm not going to be giving you guys a test over these. But the slides themselves will be up on Slack for you to download, and I'll also put them on GitHub for people to go and pull them from if they want to take a look at them. So don't think that I'm going to just flash these up here, say, hey, look at this, and then they're gone forever. You will get an opportunity to download them, and they're out there, and there's lots of documentation. All right, Git clone. This is a big one, right? And notice I put your repository. Please don't clone someone else's repository if you're ever going to make changes and put them out there. Use fork. Git add. Now, Git add can get you into some trouble. Has anybody ever accidentally committed passwords to GitHub? And what kind of fun that is getting rid of them? Oh, you have? I have. I accidentally posted my Azure credentials on GitHub one time. And I caught it immediately and pulled it down, but those things are just small little mistakes. It's just you missed one line of code in your git ignore file. And congratulations, now the whole world knows your password. And if you're like any of the other people in the world, you only have about 5 passwords and you use them in different variations, so they might have your Facebook password as well. Or you might get lucky. Git commit. So git add stages your files. And I'm going to do a live example of the git stuff to push them to an actual repo. Yes, sir? One more time for me. Git A means all. And here in a second I'll go and we can look through the documentation. They have flags and they get very advanced. You can tag some of these. The -m is a message every time you make a commit and you push something up. So let's go back real quick. When you add something, you're staging it to be pushed, right? So if you made 10 changes, 4 of them you're not happy with, but 5 of them are good to go and they're not interrelated, they're not going to break if you don't have the other 3 files, you can go ahead and add just those files and stage them to be pushed up to the repository, right? How you actually solidify those in I wouldn't say a package, so when you stage something, you're basically telling yourself it's good, add this over here, this is good to go. When you commit it, you're bundling it into a little nice, neat package for GitHub with a little history key that lets you know that, hey, these were all done at the same time. The M for the message should be meaningful. When you're doing your own repo, it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, if you just go git commit, or init commit, or something like that, it does kind of it looks a little lazy. But I mean, we are programmers. That's our thing. But you should try to make those messages meaningful. So whenever somebody else is looking back over the history of things that have been done, they go, okay, where was the index.html file uploaded? And if you've got a commit that says init commit, how are they going to know? If you got something like added button to index.html file, made some small changes to the CSS style sheet file per issue 92, that is a valuable message, that it means something, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of go through your code and figure out where they should be looking for any issues. Git pull. When you pull something, you're pulling something to your computer. It even makes sense, verbally out loud. Git pull, you're pulling something. Git merge. What does merge mean? If you merge on the highway, you have 2 lanes and they come together. Exact same thing. You're taking 2 lines of history and code things, and you're trying to smash them together and make them work. And this is where you get the merge conflicts and issues. Now, normally, notice I have some other branch. You're not going to merge if you're only in one branch. So if you're only working the master branch, there's nothing to merge really. You can merge what's not on your computer. If somebody else made a push to the repo, you can pull it. And in reality, a git pull request, it goes and gets the items and automatically merges them into your current branch. Git merge is a more direct way of specifying what branch goes where. Right? So if you're in a branch and you merge some other branch, you're taking the branch and bringing it to you and putting it in your code in your current branch. And that branching and stuff is a slightly complicated topic, and it's something that you have to practice and you have to get used to. And it is not something we could go over in a 1-hour time frame. It's something you would have to literally practice. Branches are one of the more powerful features of GitHub, and learning it very well is fairly important. Now this is how you create a new branch. -B, that's just a flag. If you're familiar with command line interfaces, those flags are just, special ways of I could put git, branch. It's just a quicker way of doing so. There are many flags. Documentation is out there galore. Git status. So not a lot of people, I get a lot of git add dot, and for those that don't know what dot is your current directory. So if you're in the main thing and you go git add dot, it adds everything. It happens all the time. If you use git status, it will show you in red what changes you've made that do not currently, have not been staged or committed, right? So if you accidentally, like you were flipping through your files and you accidentally hit, backspace and you deleted a whole line and you hit control save, because we always control save everything all the time. I know I do, it's a bad habit. Using git status will show you a list of all untracked changes, unstaged changes, and then you can add those specific files, the ones that you want specifically, into your next commit. So git status is very important. And this is, for those that want to take pictures, this is the last bullet point. So if you want to take a picture of this, but once again, it's going to be online. No. So that's a great question. So think of a fork like you're taking the entire tree and you're making a new tree with it, right? But they're kind of related. Git clone is you rip that tree out of the ground and you put it somewhere else, and you're saying it's yours. It doesn't have any links to where it was previously. So once again, that fork is important. Now, branch is exactly like the root of the tree. You're branching off, and then whenever you merge a branch, you're bringing that branch back into the master. And there's visualizations of this, and it is complicated because, it doesn't seem intuitive. I could say it out loud, and you may shake your head and go, yeah, that makes sense. And when you see it and you start doing it, you're like, oh, crap, this is too much. Yes. So pull is one of those things that you can be as specific or generic in your request as you want to be. Git pull, origin master means, you're pulling upstream into your master branch downstream. And once again, gets very convoluted, but the more you use it, and once again, just use these things, they become second nature. Git add, git status, git commit, git pull, git push. Those are like your main ones, right? And branch. Whenever you're creating a new, offshoot that you're wanting to work on independently. Those things you'll use all the time, and the more you use them, it just becomes second nature. Where there's a will, there's a way. You're going to mess something up. And it sounds bad, I know, but we learn more from the hard lessons than we do from the easy ones. Whenever you make a mistake and you have to kill an entire repo and go through the changes of doing that, you will learn your lesson, and you will probably not make that mistake many more times, because it is not a fun process. And if you start using BFG, which it's just like a cleaner tool, so if you accidentally post your credentials and you got to erase your history, congratulations, you will learn about BFG, and you will be nuking your repo, and it's just life. Those are the lessons sometimes you just have to, or those are the things you just have to, and those are the mistakes you just have to make in order to learn from them. So using these things is very important. Yeah. Portfolio. Dun, 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 dun. Now I'm going over Git and portfolio at the same time. For those of you that are, well, I'll just come right out and say it. For those of you that are lazy like me, that don't like going and researching how do I upload stuff or create a new server or paying GoDaddy money, and I want a free, quick, simple solution, GitHub allows me to do that for my portfolio, right? I can just make a portfolio, put it on GitHub, and dun-dun-dun-dun, I have a link that I can give employers, and it doesn't look like crap. And I don't have to pay for it. It's free. So, if you're I keep saying that. I hate to use the word lazy because it sounds condescending, but in reality, shortcuts. We like shortcuts. So this is just a shortcut to do that. Efficient. Yeah, we'll go with yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. See, you're wearing my favorite color shirt. I knew you were going to have good input. Right? Bonus points. So with your first portfolio, you want to keep it simple. If you are new to programming, even if you're experienced with programming, you're going to have a lot of creative things in your mind that you want to do, and you're going to think this is a have to have. In your mind, you're going to say, if I can't have this, I will not put it somewhere. I won't show anybody until I have this. Throw it out of your mind. Get rid of it. right? That you're going to have to put that off to the side. Have a list of just simple criteria. Does it have your name? Does it show a couple of things that you do? Can people know it's you and get a hold of you? That's like the most bare bones thing you can come up with. Everything else after that you can add as time goes on, right? Getting something up there, as I've done and learned a million times, is far more important than putting the most perfect thing you could up there. Now, as you get better and you get more experienced, like your base level of perfection gets a little bit larger, so you won't just put your name. You'll have some styles and you have some fancy animations or whatever it may be because you're faster. But in general, it's still not going to be, your dream portfolio. It's just going to be something you can build on. It's going to be the base for your portfolio. So keeping it simple is very important. If you have nothing up, stop what you're doing, like tonight, go on GitHub pages, create an index.html file, put your name and some stuff you've done, some links to some repos, and publish it. I don't care if it's black and white and it's just text and it looks like something from the early 90s. Do it. It is important, right? It is that valuable that even if it looks bad, I would rather have you have something up there, period, than have nothing at all. Because I don't know who you are. And if I'm a potential employer and I'm looking to hire you, I don't know who you are, what you've done. You've never been hired. You don't have a degree. Good luck. I'm not going to be calling you back. It's just how it is. You don't need a complicated back end. You don't need fancy user interactions. This goes back to that whole keeping it simple. GitHub Pages is your back end, right? You shouldn't be creating your own content management system for your portfolio. I literally just did that. It took me 3 months. And I'm still sitting on my portfolio, thinking, man, I wanted this out 3 months ago. But we go down these rabbit trails. Try to keep it as simple as possible and just get it done. Same thing for user interactions. We all want employers to play with our stuff and look at all the awesome things I can do. But if that thing takes you 3 months and you went 3 months with nobody knowing who you are, you could have lost out on the dream job that would have paid you to do this or to learn more. So once again, just get something up. All that you need is something that works, that shows work you have done or projects you have taken on. So once again, you should be using GitHub for just about everything. Now, there's a big divide between tutorials and like hand-holded lessons and things other people have done and like your own work. In the beginning, I would encourage you to just go ahead and post everything. Don't claim it's your work. Don't claim it, put on there. And there's another person who is going to the freeCodeCamps that did just this. And it worked out very well. Put on there, this is a tutorial from this website, from Udemy, whatever, however you pronounce it. Period, freeCodeCamp. This is a front-end project for this. Put it on your repository. Even if it isn't something you just created off the top of your head and done yourself, it shows that you were doing code. It shows that you were learning. It shows where you were learning it from, that you're committed to doing this for a living. So in the beginning, that's perfectly fine. Now, if you've got 10 years of experience and you've got how to make a calculator from freeCodeCamp on there, there might be some issues with that, right? Because you're supposed to be a professional at 10 years, but they're not going to expect that from you in your first job or even after a couple of years. Like, it's mediocrely acceptable. It's okay. They're not going to frown upon that. Already went over this. We almost always try to go too big, too fast. I do it every single time. Every single time I do it, there's no exception to this. But being able to recognize that you're doing it and then stopping and then going back and just getting something up, even at work, building from that base foundation is extremely valuable, and it will save you more time. You may think that you're saving time by going big and fast in the beginning, but in reality, it may take you 4 months to do that, or if you have a good, strong base and you're making these small changes, it may only take you 2 months to do. And that's just because we, as developers, we have like that feedback loop, right? The positive reinforcement we get from seeing something succeed. If something takes you 4 months to get anything up to see the benefits you're going to get from it, you're not getting that feedback loop in a very timely manner. It may discourage you from actually contributing to it. You may get a little burned out. But if you have these small feedback loops where, look, hey, I made a Jumbotron and it's got my picture on it. Awesome, boom. That's that positive reinforcement, and you may be more motivated to keep contributing to it on a regular basis. So that's just kind of like a mental hack, but it is also just important in general. Start small, build a base, and go from there. Don't try to take it all on at once. even the paradigm of source control, right? We have branches to have these little features that we want to work on, and we bring it back to the master branch. We don't take the whole project, work on the entire thing, and then resubmit that. It would take too long, and you're not going to get that feedback loop. The technology specifically, because I'm fixing to go through a little bit of an example. I'm not going to get through much today. We'll have to bring it back up. But we're going to be using just HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap, which is a CSS framework. I will not be using any JavaScript. Whoever will come up here is not going to be using any JavaScript for this portfolio. Why? Because it's, once again, that's the next level that it's not really important to just get something up. And why am I choosing Bootstrap? And there's somebody out there that's going to get on me because I despise Bootstrap. I really do. And it's nothing against them. It's a framework. It is what it is, and I'm opinionated. But it's just not my thing. But for you guys, it's the most popular. Employers still use it to death. That's why every website kind of looks the same. So it's important for you to know how to work and manipulate it. And I also have like the entire theme downloaded and kind of a style guide for you, so you can see some of the elements that it automatically includes for you. On the website, we're fixing to kind of take a look at. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to have navigation bar, Jumbotron with the welcome page, with a welcome message, a section for our projects, because that's important. Contact information, social media links, if you have any. If you don't, doesn't matter. If you don't want employers to look at them, don't put them up there. Make your profile private. You know, there's some social media things that I think are private to me, and then my Twitter is just like my Twitter, as long as they don't mind cursing. Any skills we think employers should know about us, but not a skills rubric. This one is more of an opinion, but I find it very valuable, and I've never had this particularly go wrong for me. So it's anecdotal evidence, and hey, go for it if you want to. Give it a try. Don't take my word for it. If you just have bullet point list, I know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Ruby, Python, GitHub, Git, SVN, and then you're going to go work for a company that just does C# and ASP.NET, they're not going to take the time to go through every single one of your skills that are not valuable to them. They really just aren't. You have a very short window of time of attention from the hiring manager to point out what you're going to bring to the table, right? So if you're going to be a front-end web developer and that's a job you're going for, putting, that you have a ton of SQL experience and that you know SSMS, SSRS, and SQL Server 2008, 2010, 2012, R2, et cetera, those things are valuable, don't get me wrong, but they may not be the most important thing to put on your portfolio, and you definitely shouldn't list them all out. Putting something as simple as familiar with SQL and SQL frameworks or methodologies, whatever it may be, that's perfectly acceptable. And you could do those in trendy ways. That's fine. Yeah, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at Git. So I'm going to show you how to start a repo, and hopefully we don't have any crazy business going on, but it would be funny if it did. So this is my own, right? So I get to see all my stuff. My repositories are over here. The ones that have the lock on them are private. These are repositories I specifically contribute to, so those are like my forks and stuff like that. Those are ones that I don't literally own. So, and these are the ones that I specifically own. So I would clone these, right? I'm going to be forking all of these. Okay. Making sure we're all on the same page here, right? One of you is going to clone the FCC repo. I'm going to cry a little bit, but that's okay. What do I want to name this? We'll call it right? We can do that. Carson, you're going to have this on yours too if you do anything with it. Should I do it on the FCC OKC website? I should do it on FCC OKC, right? So let's go. Stunning Octo Pancake. That was great. Naming things is hard. Nobody really likes that. How many people get stuck on just what to name whatever they're doing? Happens all the time. There's a guy that does it based on old IBM projects, like Alpha Omega 3. That's cool. Example. Right? And this is where you get to choose between public or private. If you choose private, you'll have to pay on GitHub. If you choose private on Bitbucket, it's free, but public is you have to pay. There's also a limit to how many people can contribute. Do I want to initialize this with a README? Right now I don't. I just want a purely blank repository. If I initialize this with a README file, I will have to pull the README file and work on it locally like that. But I've already got something I worked on, so I'm just going to create it absolutely from scratch. If I want a README file, I'll use it later. So blank, 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 right? All right. What's all this stuff? It like tells me literally how to do this, the command line, things that I'm going to type into the command line to do the things I want it to do. Push an existing repository from the command line. If I already have something, this is what I would use. If I want to create a new repository, this is how I would do that. So let's go over here. So this is my portfolio example, right? And if you go, I just have stylesheet index.html. Now, I haven't done any Git stuff with this, so I don't have any Git available, right? So let's go back, and I don't have any initialized stuff, but if you look, like these last two things, they're the same, right? This is just if I haven't initialized anything, that's what I would do. So I'll literally do it. Git init, right? Initialize empty Git repository. Dun, 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 dun. We've just added our source code. We've created like a little local file that'll track all our changes. If I do git status, it tells me my git ignore file has not been added. My index file has not been added. My style sheet has not been added. It's big in red, right? So git add file to include what will be committed. So if I want to stage something, use git add. So just for, posterity's sake, right? So now if I go, I added that file, new file, git ignore, big, bold, and green. That is now staged. If I do a commit right now, that is what's going to be pushed to the repository, right? So let's just go ahead and follow this. Me making this change right here, just adding this file is not going to make a difference. But I do need to link what I have on my computer to the repo out on the internet. So dun, 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 dun. Let's just git add all. My first commit, this is usually not what people say. This is what people say. They say it for everything, right? Right? Git commit message. Right? What does it tell me? Adding index file, style sheet, git ignore. I made 3 files. I inserted 679 lines of code, right? And it tells me right here what branch I'm on. I have a cool little plugin for my command line where it shows me right here what branch I'm on in the directory itself. If we go back up, you actually notice until I actually made this commit and stuff, that didn't exist. When I made this, it created a master branch automatically for me. Now, this is the link. So git remote add origin. So remote means not local, it's out somewhere else. Add, I'm adding origin, which is the initial origin of my file where I want to base all my code, my source code. And then I have my literally copy and pasted from here. And boom, there we go. So I just told Git, whenever I do git push or whatever it may be, where I'm going to be pushing this stuff to. If I had not done that step and I did git push, it would say origin not found, right? Because it doesn't know where I'm trying to send this. And last but not least, all right. So once again, this is flags. It looks complicated, but it gets easier, I promise. -u means upstream, like in the remote repository. Origin is literally telling me, so I like named, that's a good one. I should do that. This is not all that important. This is just how you check where your different upstream locations are. So if you have a remote server, for instance, you can add another like remote repository for that. Like if you have Heroku, you'll have git add Heroku file or whatever it may be. And then whenever you push it, you can say git push Heroku master, and that will push the master branch. So let's go back and we're going to push to origin, upstream, and master, right? All right. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so I made a push. No errors, nothing crazy. It tells me it wrote things, it compressed things. That's pretty much it. It tells me it put it in the master branch on the repository right here. So if I refresh this, boom, I've got my files, right? It's that simple. Now I've got a source control out on GitHub, and I've linked it with my local repository, and I've got everything, synced together, right? So if I make a change here, it's not going to be reflected here until I update it and commit it. Vice versa, if there's a change here, it's not going to reflect locally until I pull it. All right, so let's go ahead and, huh? One more time for me. Yes, so I'll go back up here. See this, when I did git add dot ignore, originally it was red down here, and this is not staged, but changed, right? And it's not on my remote repository, and I'm not doing anything with it yet. So I could delete that file, and it's not gonna change any of my commits. Once I add that, it puts it in like the staging area, which changes to be committed. So if I did a commit right now, this would be part of it, but these would not. Whenever I did git add dot, it adds everything from my current local directory. So dot slash, things like that. That's the git bash for change directory and like directory locations. So dot means current directory. And that means it added all those files. If I would have done git status right there, they would all be right here with green, and they would say new file. And then I made a commit, and it basically packages them all together, and it says these are all together. These all get staged in the same history file, and this, or in the same like history upload. And this little code right here, if I go back and actually pull up this file, look right here, 263BE62, right? Right there. So this commit is my history, and if I go back and I just click this, it will show all the files and all the changes I made. This is that importance of kind of packaging these together, making meaningful messages, and this is the history. And if I want to delete it, I have to actually use this number right here, which is a totally different key. But for the most part, we try not to go and delete history. You want to have some record of what changed, even if you made a bad change, because that may come back to bite you in the future. So for the most part, we never want to be removing history. We just want to be adding history. You don't want to rewrite what's been done. That's kind of like cheating. All right, good things almost never come from that. So yeah, so I have this little index.html file. If I go and I actually type open, this is all it is. This is just the basic bootstrap index.html file. I got this from the bootstrap.com get started website, copy and pasted. Didn't change anything. This is just how they show you all the elements. This is like a nav bar, it's drop down, no JavaScript, no nothing, right? And we'll kind of, in the future, because we don't have time today, we're fixing to wrap this up, we'll kind of go through what we would use that for just in general. But you can see this has got a lot. But how do I make this, how do I show people this, right? What's this whole GitHub pages thing? Well, if this had this says bootstrap theme, so I'll just try to do this real quick. I'll show you how to make a change. Right. Is that better? More? So I just made changes to the title, and I'm going to go down here, and where's that link? Right there. I'm not showing you how to write, I'm not showing you how to write HTML or CSS today. So I did change that. I'm not going to explain that. All right, so if I go here and go to Git Status, so I saved that. I hit Control-S, Git Status. It tells me that's been modified. It's not been staged. It's not anywhere, right? So git add index.html, right? So if I go Git Status now, it says, hey, green. This has been now staged to the commit area. If I make a commit, this will be included. Git commit. And the A means all. It's just another flag. M means message. I think A means all. I hope I'm not saying that. Somebody, I know M means message, but I don't know. I think A means all. I don't know. Anyways, the message, updated index file to include my name, right? So I made that change. Now, instead of writing all that U, origin, master, stuff like that, it's not necessary at this point. It already knows where I'm going to be pushing it to. I've already made that connection. I do git push, bum, 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 and that's me shoving things up into the repository, right? Now, I didn't override anything that would have broken it because it would have thrown an error saying, hey, there's a fast forward error, there's some kind of conflict, something like that. If you have to use hard, you might have done something wrong. Push hard means basically like you're forcing it to take what you have locally. All right, so now if I go back and go right here and I refresh, notice all these say 8 minutes ago and this says 41 seconds ago, right? And if I open this again, now it says Daniel's cool site, right? Now I want to get this up there so people can see it, and we are running out of time, so I'm going to talk really fast. I apologize. Down here, I went to settings, right? I'm going to scroll down, GitHub pages. Master branch. Sounds good to me. Save. Looks good, looks good. I hope that just didn't I hope it didn't overwrite anything. I made a bad choice by making it go to the FCC repo because we have the C name and the other one. Let's do it. We'll have to do it on mine. Because we're so out of time, I don't have time to change this. So we already have GitHub pages for this, and for those of you that don't know and want to contribute, we have fccokc.com. This is actually hosted with GitHub pages, and I'm going to show you that real quick because there's like some issues because it's an organization. I'm using GitHub pages, trying to post it to master. There's some issues that I should have foreseen doing that. But if I just go back and go to freeCodeCamp OKC, FCC OKC web, notice I have a docs file here. If I click on docs, it's got all my stuff, right? So if I want to choose a directory I'm going to associate with the name, I'm going to choose /docs as my directory I'm going to host. If I go to settings, you can actually see the source of my GitHub pages is the master branch docs folder. That's what I'm going to be serving. That simple. And then that's my custom domain. Now, normally, this is where you'd be done with it. And it would host on that, freeCodeCamp, where is it? Well, that's because of my CNAME. It'd be like freecodecamp.github.io, and that would be where it's hosted at. So if I had like Ashcraft or whatever it may be, that's where this source file would be hosted at. But because we have the CNAME, we're posting it here. But for any of your own repos, once you choose this and you choose where the source location is, it'll automatically pull the index.html file, and it will give you a link in the URL to actually go and view that, and you're done. So right here, I'm telling it to go to fccokc.com, and this is actually fccokc.com. So this is hosted with GitHub pages. We didn't do any server manipulation with this. I only chose the branch I wanted to actually show and the folder I want to show it from, and I was done. That was it. Go and play with this tonight, and once again, I'm going to wrap up real quick. If you don't have a portfolio up, get one up. If you have nothing, to display up there now, go ahead and just do it tonight. Get something up there. Just put your name. Put a big div in the middle of the screen with your name on it. Congratulations, you now have a portfolio. Not a great one, but you have something up there, and if somebody Googles your name or goes to your GitHub, they'll see that you're at least putting forth some effort. And it will also give you some motivation to keep trying. So with that being said, I apologize. Talked really, really fast towards the end because there's a lot of material to cover with this, but the big thing is, it's not a difficult process, but you need to do it. If you don't have a 4-year degree, you don't have experience, your portfolio really is like gold. Even for people that want to do server-side stuff, these things are important. If you don't have any kind of validation to your skills externally by an employer, by other people, by open source, do this thing and you will have at least some modicum of respect from the community. They'll be able to visualize what you've done. So yeah, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Real quick, I want to thank Starspace and Techlahoma. Techlahoma sponsors us and gives us the ability to be here. Starspace has done a fantastic job. They hosted us for a long time. for very little charge because of what we were trying to do. Cannot thank them enough. They continue to help us even to this day. And we have a meetup, I believe, every single day this week for other user groups. So I believe it'll be like C#, it'll be open source hardware, JavaScript, not JavaScript, Java, Python. I mean, if you have something you're interested in doing, you want to learn more about it, make these meetups. They're fantastic. They're going to give you a deeper level of knowledge in whatever you're personally interested in, whereas we give you more high-level overview of what it takes to just get into web development. So yeah, with that being said, I appreciate you all for coming out today. And that'll be it for the stream, and I'll make a little short announcement.